Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another session of Canvas Live. Canvas Live sessions are presented by the Canvas community members or Instructure employees or both to help Canvas users improve and enhance their teaching and learning with Canvas. Today is session number 5 in our Groupies series. We're going to talk about people groups. My name is Birai. I'm a community manager here at Instructure, and with me we have Rob, Ditto, and Linda Lee from Wharton, University of Pennsylvania. So I will go ahead and say good morning to you both.
Good morning, Birai. Hi, I'm Rob Ditto. I'm a technical director at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And one of my team members is
Linda Lee. I'm an instructional design project leader here, and I work with faculty to help them improve their use of Canvas for their courses.
Perfect. Welcome. It's great to have you again. We've been doing this for a few months now, and we've been deep diving into what does groups mean in Canvas. As you know, the word groups is used throughout Canvas, and they have different contexts depending on where you use them. So our goal in this series was to unravel these meanings. So groups in Canvas might refer to student groups, a smaller version of your course, which leverages a separate space for discussions and collaborations. It could mean group work, leveraging collaboration tools for working on common projects together as a team. It could mean group assignments, the actual submission of assignment by a group of students, so one group submission per group. It could mean assignment groups, which is grouping the actual assignments together into one group in a course. So for more so for organization and weighted grading. Or it could mean assignment for a group, where you have an assignment and it's intended for a specific group of students or audience, sort of what we call differentiated assignments. And so we've talked about most of these, and today we're going to talk about student groups, the final sort of round out in the series. So we're going to deep dive into the considerations and what people groups are, and then the considerations that you want to have going into creating them. I'm going to just do a quick high-level overview of how to create and what to think about when you're creating, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rob and Linda, who are going to give you the more hands-on and experiential considerations that you need to have. So a very simple overview. We're going to talk about how to create people groups at the account level or the course level. We're going to view how people groups are accessed as students and viewed as students or users who are viewing those groups and how to get to them. And then we're going to just briefly touch upon what you can do functionally in those groups. So if you want to create an account level group, which is an admin privilege only, account level groups are mainly used for creating, grouping users at the account level for clubs, for faculty groups, for committees, for student groups, and things like that. They don't have anything specifically tied to courses. So you would go to your users in the admin tab, click on view groups, view user groups, and then create a group set. From there, you'll be prompted to add the group name, and then you can limit it to the number of users, or you can just go ahead and add the users from there. The course level groups, they can function independently as well. They don't have to necessarily be tied to specific assignments or discussions or things within the course, but predominantly they're used for those reasons. But the course level student groups are for a collaborative space for your students to kind of connect and discuss things. In order to enable those course level groups, you would have to actually go to your course. This is something that teachers could do. Go to your course settings, go to the people, and then you would go to create group from there, and then be able to allow those students to, allow the teachers to create those groups. If you want, you can enable students to create groups as well. So if you want to view those users, if you want to view those groups at the account level, you can just go to groups on your dashboard, and you will have a list of groups that you can pick from there. If you want to view groups from a student level and you're at the course, You could go to People tab, and that's where you can then access your groups from there. Keep in mind that those groups are listed in alphabetical order, so your naming conventions have to be such that you want them to view those groups in a specific order. And of course, depending on how you set up those groups, the students will be able to join or leave or switch groups depending on how they're set up. Basically, all of these how-tos will be linked at the end to specific group guides in the community. So you can go a little bit further into how those things are created in the guides. But finally, I'll conclude before I hand it over to Rob and Linda. The group functionalities pretty much are the same as far as course functionality is concerned. In other words, you can still add files, you can still add create announcements, start discussions, build pages, leverage the conferencing tool and the collaboration tool as well. The only difference is that everyone in the group, all the members in the group, have this ability and this functionality. There are group leaders that can manage a group membership and a group name if they need to. Otherwise, the functionality is pretty much the same across all groups. All right, so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rob and Linda, where they'll talk about the considerations you want to make when you're creating any type of people group. Rob, Linda?
So to get started, when we think about student-created groups in a Canvas site, these can be appropriate for a wide range of non-assignment, but still course-related purposes. Obviously, if you're having a group assignment, you'll want a group that can be used with that group assignment, but there are lots of other purposes why a teaching team might want to enable this functionality. This could include ad hoc study groups, informal project groups, creating the ability for students to organize themselves into groups for various course-related events. These might include things like course-related films or field trips that they're taking on their own, either officially as part of the course or unofficially. So there are a wide range of purposes why a teaching team might want to let students create groups.
And the tools within these group spaces can be for collaboration and communication across all of the students who are members of a group, and that could be really general purpose capabilities such as authoring pages, sharing files, posting announcements or discussions. There are a couple of communication tools available at the groups level, which are collaborations and conferences.
And then to that, I would also add that groups have access to a course calendar that is specific to that group. And so group members can add calendar events that will then appear on the Canvas calendars for everyone who is part of that group. So if a group is being set up for the purposes of a book club that's associated with a course that's meeting several times over the course of the semester, or a study group that's meeting several times over the course of the semester, then an event can be created that appears in the same place where they're seeing all of the other course-related events.
And don't forget that you're subject to the total limit of calendars that can be active at any one time. So a student might only see the group calendar events or even appointments if your institution uses Scheduler, if they have that group calendar selected. So on the next slide, if you're within a course and your course has enabled students to create groups, more on that in a slide a bit later, the first group will be created by a student using the plus group button. We have that on a few of the screenshots here. In this one, it's a little dark because we're also showing the wizard for students to actually create a group. When a student is creating a group within a course, the type that they can create themselves, they can set the name of the group. They can set a joining policy. This is sort of a one-time setting with the choices course members are free to join or invitation only. When I say that that's sort of a one-time setting, a teaching team member or designer with group permissions working with this course can intervene later to change that if needed. And then much like a leader would in a group for an assignment, there's an invite button that's based on checkboxes to include who are going to be the initial other students in this group.
As Rob said, this functionality is by default available only when the group is created for the first time. So if a student creates a group, sets it up as invitation only, but doesn't actually invite anyone at that point in time, it can get a little bit tricky for other people to join that group without some intervention by a teaching team member.
And speaking of the teaching team, Linda gives a very useful sort of solution to a chicken and egg problem on this slide. We'll see on the next slide the sort of place where student groups, or in a subsequent slide, where student groups live in the course. The way to get that, if you can't co-opt a student to say, hey, go create this one group that we aren't going to use, the other workaround for getting that student groups tab is to have the test student create one test group in essence.
And that group can then be joined. It can be an actual real group. Other students can join it, and someone else can be set as a leader.
Right. Well, the test student generally can't interact with assignment groups, assignment-related groups. This is an exception to that.
Which was kind of a welcome exception to learn about.
So within a course, students will see the sign-up sheet for other groups in the course alongside the listings of their student groups. And just as in a previous GROUPIES series where we talked about this page before, there are join, leave, or switch to commands, and then the set of groups or the group category name is shown right next to the group name. The ones that students can create will always have that group name student group. So if you see on 5 of these groups in the screenshot, there's a student group indicator. Those are the ones that aren't related to the fairy tales assignment in this course, but are instead the student created groups.
And one thing that I would note here is that these appear at the bottom of the list. The groups, as Birai noted earlier, the groups are presented on the groups page in alphabetical order. The place where there's a little bit of an exception to this are the student groups, which will appear at the bottom of the page. So in alphabetical order within that grouping, but at the bottom of the page.
So if students are saying, I don't see where my groups are, if they created them, they can use the groups icon in global navigation, or just remind them that they need to go to people and then the groups tab there and scroll all the way to the bottom. Sometimes this is one of the slower progressive loads in Canvas for each of the groups to appear, but those student groups will eventually appear at the bottom with visit links if you're a member of the group, or a manage link if you had created it, or if you were the lead. I'm sorry, if you were granted leader access later by a member of the teaching team.
One of the quirks about the way that student groups work is that students who create a group are not automatically set as the group leader.
They're sort of not full-fledged leaders. They get one leader behavior, which is the ability to change the group name, and that never really goes away for them. But the rest of the group management is not really available to them unless they are granted the leader role, which is done the same way that it is for a course assignment related group.
So as students are looking at the list of groups that they can join, the list of student-created groups that they can join, as Rob said, they'll see the familiar join and leave options, the visit option, the manage option if they've been made the group leader. They may also see a padlock, and that indicates that they cannot actually join or leave a group. So if the settings, if the membership settings for the group itself is set to by invitation, then a student will not be able to join or leave the group. Rather, they will whatever their membership status is what it will remain without intervention by the teaching team. And however, they will still be able to see who's part of that group. So students can create groups that other students cannot be part of, but the membership of those groups is visible to everyone enrolled in the course.
One last thing I want to recap while we're still on this slide is that students can join or be placed in multiple groups. So for groups within a course, the student group set is the only one that allows that allows the same student to be a member of more than one group. If you have a teaching need for groups that allow that, you're definitely going to want to use student groups.
And this absolutely makes sense for assignments that are connected to groups. It would be very confusing if a student was in multiple groups and trying to submit an assignment for that.
Right, or getting credit for two different groups' work. That's why, that's why we believe that the original design of this wasn't intended for assignment-related groups to allow students to belong to more than one. But that is not to say that there aren't teaching use cases where it is appropriate for students to be in more than one group.
If, for example, you have an assignment where students are optionally allowed to collaborate with another student, but don't want to set up formal groups and have a formally created group assignment for that. This could be a workaround for that, provided that students understand that they need to that everyone needs to submit their work. Otherwise, it won't appear within SpeedGrader.
So now we're finally seeing the appearance of the student groups tab for the teachers and TAs and any designers working the course who have permissions into people in groups. That tab is always called student groups, but it will only appear after the first group is created. That was why our earlier slide said, a student, including the test student, will need to create one in order to get this interface.
After the first group is created and the student groups tab appears, at that point in time, teaching team members will have access to this and will themselves have access to the ability to create a new group. And you can see on the screenshot the plus group button that's available here.
But like I said before, it's a chicken and egg thing. Until that first student group within the student group set is created, you don't have the usual controls here, such as plus group or the gears for each group.
Once groups are created, teaching team members can have a lot of control over what happens with those groups. Even though they are intended to be student organized groups, teaching team members can adjust the group membership by manually dragging and dropping students from the list of everyone into a particular group. If a teaching team member places someone from the everyone list into a group, they will still appear on the everyone list because, as Rob indicated, they can be members of multiple groups here. So they will not disappear from a list after they're added to a group. Teaching team members can also edit the group settings and allow the membership options of the group to be either free to join or by invitation. So if a student sets up a group with an invitation only setting, but they want to make that available for anyone to join, a teaching team member can change that. teaching team members can also, in this screen, adjust or delegate a student to be a group leader. We don't actually have it shown on here, but if you select the options for editing a particular student within the group itself, one of the options is to set as leader.
Right, each student will have a gear. This works very similarly to the same leader function in a graded group, and we talked about that in a previous GROUPIES series.
And just to reiterate what we've said before, the student groups group set, because for all intents and purposes, this looks like, and in many ways behaves like, other group sets. The student groups group set is not available for use with graded assignments.
Right, if you're editing assignment options and you've selected that this is a group assignment, you're not going to be able to pick student groups as the group set associated with a particular assignment. That's by design, and you get the nice benefit of the one group set in a course that can have students be in more than one group. So what we're looking at now, getting into considerations for admins, is that if you were using account level groups, the management interface for admins is very similar to what we just described for the student groups in a course. It has, and also has some similarities to creating other types of group categories for assignments in a course. This can exist either at the root account level or at sub-account levels. And the way that you get to it is by going to the users in account or sub-account and then pressing View User Groups. I believe a previous slide showed that. And there is an additional piece of UI that doesn't appear in any other group management capability in Canvas, where for a group that's already been created, the administrator can press a little plus button that says Assign User to Group. That's a way to pick anybody who is active within this particular account or sub-account as a student and assign them to a group. I believe this exists because outside of a course, you don't have that panel of unassigned students that you would have when you're inside a course. So if you have particular reasons for using groups that aren't part of a course, one of the considerations is, how do I keep these organized? Do I want to have these as account level groups, or do I want to have these within courses? My opinion on that is that you decide it based on who's responsible for shepherding the students in a group. If the person or group of people that are doing that are not supposed to be Canvas admins or are never going to be Canvas admins, then it might make sense to use one or more courses whose purpose is really to host groups for clubs. But if this will be something that your institution's Canvas admins will be doing, then admins would be able to issue freestanding account level groups, either at the root account level or at sub-account level. These groups can optionally have a default size limit if that makes sense for the type of group scenario that you have. But by default, they would be unlimited. The group can have as many members as you can. One thing that isn't limited is the quota. If your administrator or sub-account administrator hasn't changed the very default group quota, it is the very small 50 megabytes of files that members of a group can contribute before they start being unable to submit additional files. Fortunately, admins can increase either the default group quota or give specific groups higher quotas, and the admin guide has information on how to accomplish that. Bear in mind that a difference with account level groups or student groups in a course, or really any type of group, is that unlike files in a course where only teaching team members can replace or delete files, in a group setting, anybody can replace or delete files, and anybody can replace or delete other types of items created by other members. And we talked about those types of items before: pages, or announcements, collaborations, conferences. It's kind of a free-for-all.
But in a good way.
Yes.
We do have a comment or a question that came in through the live chat from Meg. To add a group user to a sub-account level group, they would have to be in the SIS, right?
Yes. You can't use this screen to invite a user from the outside if your root account allows open registration, or if you're an admin and you're creating somebody similar to how you would open registration. That works for adding people to courses, but it doesn't work for adding people to groups. At a sub-account level, it means that the user already needs to be in courses associated with the sub-account. So that can be another chicken and egg with sub-account level groups.
And she says, what about staff groups or leadership groups? These folks would need to be manually added as well. Yes? So it goes back to saying that you have to add the user to the account before adding them.
Right. Since we don't use account level groups at our institution, there are some ins and outs of delegation for account level groups that we haven't experienced ourselves. But what I can say is definitely possible is if you had a course that contained a bunch of staff development groups, then designating particular members as leaders of those groups is a way to open up delegation. I think, Linda, you had some ideas that we were hashing out in chat. Do you want me to bring that up over various ways that you could use groups for staff development?
So some of the ideas that I had about how you might use groups for staff development included things like faculty within a particular program or in a large enrollment multi-section course being placed within an account level group as a way of sharing assignments or course materials. It would also potentially open up the ability to use, if this is a group that has a Canvas site associated with it, use the announcements feature within that Canvas site as a way of communicating information to members of that group in a way that might circumvent an unread message in someone's email box and appear in the same learning management system where they're already spending some time.
One thing, if you could address, what about, if a student creates a group but they want to continue leveraging the group, what happens when a course is concluded? What happens to those student groups? Would you speak a little to that?
Yes. So this might be another decider, so to speak, for what strategy you want for a group. If these arise in a course, but the course is not meant to be available forever. Once the course concludes, those groups are going to become inaccessible. So that might help with, knowing that behavior might help you decide, okay, for certain types of groups, do I really want them to be hosted within a course that ends? Do I instead want them to be hosted inside a specialized course, one of whose purpose, or possibly whose only purpose, is to manage groups? And or do I want to have those exist at the account level or sub-account level, with the caveat that an admin will necessarily need to help manage all of that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And maybe even if it doesn't require admin level sort of management, it warrants at least an announcement to the students, like as this course concludes, your student groups are no longer accessible, or something along those lines. We are taking questions through the live chat. So if you do have a question for Rob or Linda, feel free to post it in there. And I think, I guess one final thought, or one thing maybe you might want to address, is what would be the consideration between leveraging a course shell to function like a group versus a group, if you wanted to put it that way, sort of repurposing groups within a course shell?
So I had talked before about how groups within a course shell is one of your best go-tos for when you have one person or a set of people who are going to be in charge of disparate groups at your institution or at a department within your institution, but aren't necessarily going to be Canvas admins, even limited admins. So I'd say admins or not, that's one consideration. When you can house these groups within a course, that opens up the option of having non-administrators of your Canvas instance being involved in managing groups.
Great, thank you. It doesn't look like there are any other additional questions that are coming in. However, if you do have questions for Rob and Linda, they'll be following the event space. You can always go to the actual event where this exists, and you can post our questions there. And we'll also post a link to, oh, I think Paul has a question coming in.
Oh, good. Hi, Paul. We know Paul. Paul's a friend of ours from Harvard Business School.
And Meg's question that you answered earlier, she found it helpful as well. So while those questions are coming in, I just wanted to make note of the fact that you can always ask your questions in the event space. We can continue the dialogue and continue the conversation as well. And we are bundling the series up to get a badge. So if you missed any of the other Groupies sessions that talked about assignment groups and groups for assignments and group discussions and things like that, we are bundling all those into playlists. You can view them and get a badge and points that says, hey, I know about groups, thanks to Rob and Linda. Paul's question came in and says, are account level groups still funky and not feature equivalent to course level groups?
So that's a very interesting question. We had some sort of surprises in researching this. I had not noticed over the years how built out the management tools for admins are at that route for where admins can do that, which again is in your account or sub account, you go to users and then press view user groups. A surprising number of features that were developed for course needs, such as size limits and the leader functionality are available there. Admins will see multiple tabs for managing the account level groups. So there could be, you get, at each account or sub-account level, you get a way to sort of subdivide the universe of groups and organize similar groups similarly. If I am sort of straining to think of a use case for limited size account level groups, but if you have that need, it is there. One thing that we didn't mention prior to now is that SIS import of account level groups is a possibility. Getting to the wording that Paul used in asking his question, I haven't tested that for years, and the last time that I did test it, I would agree that it was funky. So if you anticipate that you have, say, a master source of group memberships that you might want to save human clicking labor by importing, based on my past experience, I would recommend testing that extensively before you announce an offering of, hey, you can create a set of account level groups and have your admins manage them by SIS import, or have them, manage them in any other way other than the admin pointing and clicking. I have a list of loose ends for the whole groupie series that this summer I'll come back to revisiting, and pardon the redundancy there, that I'll come back to. And one thing I definitely plan to come back to is whether there is a way to delegate management of a specific group at the account level to a non-admin. I don't know that, because that UI that we saw on one previous slide with the little plus button is new to me.
Thanks, Rob. Would you be able to manage a non-admin if you created a sort of an empty course shell and then had them create a lot of groups from there, whereas the course itself doesn't really function as a course, but because you've enabled that functionality, would that be a workaround?
It is, and that was really the method that that we know will work, that relates to, I believe it was Meg's question before, that you can really empower people who aren't going to be Canvas admins, or who you don't need to plan out their permissions for being Canvas admins, by housing one set of student groups within a course.
Right. That's great. Thanks for that clarification. Okay. Well, thank you again, Rob and Linda, for your insights and letting us know about these different considerations. I think we've covered a lot of material over the last few months, and I look forward to continuing to uncover more over the next few months. Anyway, we encourage everybody to get involved in Canvas Live, like Rob and Linda. Go to live.canvaslms.com. You should follow the space in order to be notified of upcoming events. If you're not in the Canvas Live user group and you want to brainstorm ideas and do some presentations with fellow community members, that's where we start sort of with germinal ideas and kind of flourish them and build on them until they become a Canvas Live presentation like this. And of course, you can also hang out in our Canvas Live chat rooms, where there are some other users there chatting in real time as well. With that, I just want to say thank you to our guests again, Linda and Rob, for being here this morning or afternoon, wherever you are. We appreciate your insights, and we look forward to hearing more from you as well.
Well, thank you, and I want to say thank you for conceiving of this series and collaborating with us on building it. It's so exciting that there's a resource that's available to the Canvas community that will live on, and I think it's incredibly cool that you have got a badge in the community for viewing the GROUPIES series. How cool is that? It's just one of the really innovative ways that the folks who make Canvas collaborate with customers and make the community awesome.
I'd like to echo everything that Rob just said. Thank you.
You guys are the awesome parts. I just sit there and say, hey, I could help you if you want to. And you do it, and you did. So it's all you. The kudos goes to you. You're the ones working to get the deep dive and the insights and the considerations. You're the ones using these tools. So it helps us too. So thank you for being here. And thank everybody else for being here as well. We hope you continue watching the series, and I'm sure we'll be back with Rob and Linda picking their brains in the fall. Have a great week, everybody. Be productive, and we'll talk to you soon.